Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Juliet. So in this video I'm going to be showing you how I made this boo top. If you're interested, please keep on watching. If you're yet to subscribe, please click the subscribe button and also the notification bell so you'll be notified whenever I post a new video. So here I have 2.5 yards of Ankara fabric folded into two and then folded again, making it 4 folds. So here it's measuring 22 inches across, and then for the length, it's the length of my top, which is 32 inches plus another 10 inches, making 45. So here I'm marking 10 inches down from the top. I'm marking 10 inches all across. I'm going to use my ruler to connect that into a straight line, and that is going to be my shoulder line moving forward. So everything is going to start from that 10 inches point. So now I'm marking the length of my top plus 2 inches of allowance. So I'm working with 32 altogether. I'm going to mark that across. I'm going to connect that into a straight line like so. So next off, I'm marking the neck width of 3 inches, and then I'm marking neck depth of 4 inches. So 3 inches wide, 4 inches deep. So I curve that in. Next off, I'm marking my shoulder measurement divided by 2, which is 7.5. And then from that shoulder point, from that 7.5 point, I'm going to connect into a slant to the top part, as you can see. So up here, I am going to mark 1 inch in and then curve it to the down part, like so. Next off, I am marking 12 inches down, which is my bust point. I mark 12 inches down and I'm going to connect into a straight line. So this is my shoulder line. It's not useful, so please ignore. So here I'm marking my hip measurement divided by 4 plus 1 inch ease and 2 inches seam allowance. I'm marking it up here and I'm going to mark the same thing on the lower part. So I'm connecting that into a straight line and then I'm going to curve it out like so. So next up, on the down part, I came up by 2 inches and then I made a curve, even though the curve disappeared when I finished. So next up, from that shoulder line, I'm marking my half length point, which is 18 inches. We're going to be notching that for later. Next up, I'm cutting, starting from here, following that slant up there. So I came across this tutorial on Nancy's channel, by the way. You may want to check that out, although I made a few changes plus There was no collar on her own, but I added a collar to mine. So this half length point where I marked, I'm going to be notching it. Next up, I'm opening it up like so. And this is what it's looking like so far. So at the middle, that's the midpoint or the center front, I'm going to mark 10 inches. So I marked 10 inches to this side, which is going to be the shoulder that will be off. But I adjusted that later. I guess I'm not bold enough to leave much of my shoulder out. So I adjusted it later on to about 8 or thereabout. So you can use 10 if you are bold and you're on the bigger side like me. So I'm cutting it out like so. And then I'm going to notch that 10 inches point. So from there, I will sew ½ inch, joining both front and back together. And then on this other side again, I will sew ½ inch all the way. Next up, I'm cutting the belt using this piece I cut out on the shoulder part. I'm going to measure. The belt is 4 inches wide, and then I'll measure the 4 inches wide all the way like so, and then I'll cut that out. So after cutting it out, I divided it into two, and then I'm going to cut some other pieces and join to these two pieces to form the belt. So I'm going to place the piece like so, right sides together, join, and then fold it into two, right sides together again, and then join them together, leaving the upper side open. So I added a couple of pieces to it, and then after everything, my belt was about 39 inches long. So that is it for the belt, and here is the top with the shoulders joined together. So next up, I'm going to fold the sleeve to form a casing for the elastic. So I just folded it in such that my elastic can pass through easily. So I'll go sew it down and then repeat the same thing for the other sleeve. So after sewing, this is what I have. I've also hemmed the lower part of the top. Here is my elastic piece. So I used my bicep measurement, which is 16. I subtracted 5 inches from that, making 11. So my elastic piece is 11 inches long. Using a safety pin, I'm going to insert it through that channel. So once I get it in on this side, I will use a pin to hold it in place before I continue passing it through. So once I get to this point, I'm going to pin it down as well. So I'm going to repeat the same thing for the second sleeve. After that, we're going to be placing the belt. So remember the half length point that I notched. I'm going to be placing the belt on it. So at this point, I placed the belt from that half-inch notch down, which is what I used to sew, but I changed it from the half-inch down to the half-inch up. So at that point, the belt was too low for me. It didn't sit well. So I loosened it later, but you see. So I'm going to place the blouse, the top, right sides together now, and then I'll use 1 inch to sew both sides together. So after sewing, I tried it on, and then I saw that the shoulder, the part that was off, was too off for me. So I made a mark where I wanted it to sit, and then that is what I am adjusting here. So that's the point where I made the mark using my chalk. So I'm going to sew that back into the initial seam. So from that point, I'll sew it, blend it back in like so. So measuring from the center, that gave me about 8.5 or so, or thereabout. So I'll take it back and go sew it back in, and then I also loosened the belt point and shifted it up. So my belt now stops at the half length. It starts somewhere from the under bust and then stops at my half length instead of starting from the half length like I initially fixed it. So I've adjusted it now from the half length up to the upper part. So I'll take it back and then go and close that point as tightly as possible. After which I tried it on again, and this time around it was good. I was liking it. So if you don't want the collar, you can just finish your neck with the bias tip at this point and move on. But I wanted a collar, so we're going to move over to cutting the collar piece. So here I'm going to measure all around the neckline very carefully because it's important. I'll measure all around, then get whatever I have there. That's what we're going to use to cut the collar. So I measured twice, which is very important. And if after measuring twice we don't have the same answer, we'll measure a third time until all the times we measured are giving us the same figure. That is when we proceed. So here I have a piece of plain black fabric. I'm going to fold it in the bias form like this. So I'm marking 4 inches, which is the height of the collar, folded into 2. So I'm marking 4 inches all across. I'm going to use my ruler to connect that. So next up, from this edge I will mark what I got from my neckline plus 1 inch. So I got 29.5 plus 1 inch, that is 30.5, and then I made a mark. So next I'm going to cut like so from that slant, and then I will cut like so till I get to this point. Then I will fold this over and place it on that chalk we marked, and then I'm measuring again to be sure that I have half of 30.5, which is 15.25. So I'm going to replicate that slant on this side again and then cut it out. So next I ironed a fabric interfacing, I think it's called ST. I ironed ST on it. After which I folded it into 2, and then I will go and sew ½ inch on this edge and ½ inch on this edge as well. After which I ironed it, and then I'm going to be pinning it on my top. So on the shoulder that is off, I'm going to start from there, pin exactly on that seam. This is the right side of the top, by the way. So I'm pinning on the right side. I'm going to pin it all across till we get back to that point again, and then we'll go sew it and then use the bias strip to finish the raw edges. So after sewing, this is what we have. This is the right side and this is the inside with the bias strip. Everything is looking clean, and that is how to make a bubu top with one shoulder off and a collar. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Please like this video, share it with your friends, leave a comment, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I will see you in my next video. Bye.
Baby, it's whatever. All this ever about you long gone, it don't matter. Ride or die, that's been the deal. The light of your body disappear. But if it's